The land of Barovia, a nation enveloped in an eternal mist that has lasted for centuries. Few can say the last time that the sun has blessed the countryside. The people live under the shadow of Barovia's fearsome ruler, the dread vampire Count Strahd von Zarovich, a terror that some have come to refer to as the devil. Some seek to curry favor with Strahd, while others have foolishly sought to depose him. Such attempts have without fail ended in death, or worse. But the devil's gaze has reached beyond the borders of his realm. It is here that we find a certain group of adventurers who have been brought to this shrouded country. What they have experienced thus far is but a taste of the horrors of Barovia, and while it is unclear why Strahd has taken interest in them, one thing that is certain is that moments of peace are rare in this land. We find our travelers in one of those rare moments, a certain inn in a town called Vallaki, as they take a much-needed break as they prepare for whatever horrors await them next.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Delvin. After what we just went through in that castle, we needed a rest.
Indeed. Though, truth be told, Tatiana, the only reason we've even come back alive from Castle Ravenloft is because Strahd let us go.
Yeah, I can't deny that.
It would not be in the best interest of a cleric to tell lies. Besides, after what happened in Lionsmith...
Let's not go there right now, please.
Apologies.
It's fine. By the way, Delvin, when we had our dinner with Strahd, you mentioned that you'd been to the Republic of Darraken before, right? What was that all about?
Well, I was asked to help with an important ceremony taking place in the Republic's capital. It was quite an interesting affair. As it turns out, while I was there, one of the client's friends, a merchant by the name of Espersona, told me about what happened there several years prior.
Okay. You have my interest.
So, the story goes like this. Man, when I was a kid, Dungeons & Dragons was the kind of thing that I thought was often viewed as mega geek territory. As in, you might not have had many friends outside of your nerd group who knew you were into that stuff. However, in more recent years, it's developed more interest from people out of its original comfort zone. This can be attributed to the original demographic getting older to the point where A, they're becoming a key demographic which the entertainment industry is catering more towards, and B, some members of that demographic are becoming creatives in that very industry. What does that have to do with the arcades, you might ask? Well, I'm getting to that. Or rather, we're getting to that. After all, common sense dictates that you bring a party before venturing into the dungeon. In this case, a party of two.
Hello everyone, the Green Scorpion here, and yeah, remember that next mission we mentioned the last time we did a collab? Well, this is that mission. See, both Adam and I have really gotten into Dungeons & Dragons over the past several years, and it's given us some very exciting adventures. Speaking of adventures, the fantasy genre has been a staple in video game settings, and not just in RPGs. We've seen several games take place in high fantasy worlds, from action adventures to platformers, and, relevant to today's topic, the beat-em-up genre.
Games like Golden Axe and Metamorphic Force have scratched that itch for monsters and magic, but Capcom especially had a thing for fantasy in the arcades back in the day, with classics such as Magic Sword, The King of Dragons, and Knights of the Round. And in the mid-90s, they cut a deal with TSR to make games based on Dungeons & Dragons, resulting in two legendary beat-em-ups based on the franchise, Tower of Doom and Shadow over Mystara.
These two games were Capcom's attempt to translate the world of D&D into a beat-em-up, trying to capture that experience while working within the boundaries of the genre. Obviously, the experience isn't exactly one-to-one. I mean, you can't exactly roll a d20 every time you press an attack button, but they certainly captured the world of D&D. So today, we're setting out to see how Capcom captured the essence of fantasy tabletop adventures into these titles, and, more importantly, how well they actually did it.
And shout out to Pure Platinum patron Adam Espersona for suggesting this topic. And thank you for your patience, it took quite a bit of preparation to get this moving. Now let's set up by looking at the circumstances that led to these games.
Okay, we're gonna need a knowledge history check on that one.
I'll leave that to you. Tatiana has the better intelligence modifier.
Well, that's our characters, not us, but I'll humor you. Alright, 17 with a +3 modifier.
Ooh, a dirty 20, nice, that'll get us something.
Let's start with the deal itself. First we have Capcom, who developed the arcade games, Tactical Studies Rules, or TSR, the company that originally published Dungeons & Dragons, and Strategic Simulations Incorporated, or SSI, a company which had its own license to develop D&D games for computers. Part of the deal for Capcom was to develop an SNES port of Eye of the Beholder, one of the games that SSI published as part of their own deal. As for creating their own, well, Capcom's Japan home office was having trouble getting the green light from TSR.
With that in mind, it fell to the US branch to handle negotiations. Perhaps they figured someone there had the better charisma modifier. In any case, in January of 1992, representatives from Capcom met with TSR to work out the deets. They decided to write the story first and then build the game around that, a little bit like an actual D&D campaign. There was just one problem. Most of the people at Capcom weren't familiar with the rules and lore of D&D.
Thankfully, Assistant James Goddard had someone in the party that he could turn to.
Enter Alex Jimenez, the resident D&D buff on Capcom's payroll. He would be the one who took charge of the party, drawing up the concept and making it understandable for a Japanese audience, testing the products, applying concept art for the characters, and resolving a debate between Capcom and SSI on whether the game should be Asian-themed or Western-themed. One of the biggest challenges he faced was trying to help the devs in Japan get a grasp of the D&D elements. The solution? Jimenez created an actual D&D campaign, having a group in the San Jose office play through it with himself as the DM, and then having the devs in Japan revise a scenario based on the players' reactions.
Dungeons & Dragons Tower of Doom was the first game to come out of this deal, developed on the CPS2 hardware and released in arcades in 1994. So let's pop a quarter in the slot and start this baby up!
Wouldn't a copper piece be more appropriate for this context?
Nah, doesn't roll off the tongue as well.
So, the story goes like this. It began with a rash of monster attacks that threw Darokin into disarray after a long period of relative peace.
That sounds familiar. So was there anything different about these attacks?
Well, are you familiar at all with Corwin Linton of the Linton Merchant Guild?
Linton... I know I've heard that name before.
Well, apparently he noticed something about the attacks. They didn't appear to be random. They seemed to be organized.
You mean like there was someone or something commanding them?
Precisely. So Linton began seeking adventurers from the region to aid in his investigation. And this is where the players come in. Up to 4 of them to be exact, and there are 4 classes to choose from. The fighter, known for his swordplay and endurance, the cleric, who wields his holy spells and trusty mace, the dwarf, who's resistant to magic and as hardy as they come, and the elf, who, while frail, wields both sword and sorcery, and is cute as hell.
Kinda weird that dwarf and elf are classes when they're actually races in D&D, but anyway.
Once you've chosen your classes, you register your names with Mr. Hagar over here before you set off on your quest.
Yeah, as if it wasn't obvious enough that Capcom was behind this. Now, as you start the first stage, you'll notice that the on-screen dialogue reads like how a real DM would narrate. As for the gameplay, first you gotta find stuff to pick up before your first real combat encounter, kobolds, and they're accompanied by a gnoll with an axe. Classic D&D. The music changes when enemies appear, like in classic RPGs, and the combat plays more like an enhancement of Golden Axe, which was one of the games that inspired Jimenez when designing this title.
And when we say enhanced, I mean yes, we have your standard attacks and your jumping attacks, but there's also smash attacks, dash attacks, down airs, back airs, crouching, sliding, evasion, and even guarding and countering. You don't see that often from beat-em-ups in the 90s. That's quite a lot out of 2 buttons, and it makes for a more tactical approach to fighting enemies on its own. Except, this is a 4-button game. The other 2 buttons are for the inventory, something which was added later in development. One button cycles through your inventory, and the other uses the selected item.
Yeah, can't have D&D without your bag of holding, am I right? The inventory can include throwing daggers, incendiary oil, hammers, magic scrolls for the spellcasters, and magic rings. And the spells have their own gamut, including D&D staples like Magic Missile, Fireball, Lightning Bolt, Hold Person, Cure Serious Wounds, Sticks to Snakes, and one of my personal all-time favorites, Polymorph. And that's not even the whole list. You'll find all of this in both enemy encounters and treasure chests. Just be careful, some of those chests are booby-trapped.
Now, once you've beaten your first group of enemies, you encounter a wounded NPC who tells you that his caravan was ambushed and that some monsters are gathering in the mountains while others are preparing to attack the nearby town. So now the next RPG element comes into play. Player choice. You can decide which branch to take, the mountain or the town. This was inspired by Thayer's Quest, a Laserdisc game developed in 1984 by RDI Video Systems, the lead team behind the more famous Dragon's Lair.
There are several of these choices throughout the game, ensuring that you won't see everything in a single run. This adds quite a level of replay value, something that you didn't see in most beat-em-ups at the time. It is definitely a way to influence players to drop more quarters in for more runs. Not hurting that front is the fact that this game, like a lot of 90s beat-em-ups, is challenging as hell. You're gonna be hearing that insert coin quip several times throughout your journey.
Welcome to the D&D world.
One thing to note is that the choices reconverge after a stage. Whether you take out the ogre leader in the mountains or save the town, your quest continues on the road to Darrokin City. Whether you head to Darrokin City to secure help for Fort Cruth, only to save a merchant's daughter from a manticore, or fight the beasts in the fort yourself, culminating in a fight with a displacer beast, you'll be setting off on a boat to meet Corwin in the city of Athenos. You'll be fighting a troll on that boat, which will regenerate health unless you, or someone on the crew, kills it with fire! That is some attention to detail right there.
A couple of things to note. While your score is displayed in experience points, and you get bonus XP depending on how fast you clear a stage, they drop to 0 when you continue, so level ups happen with milestones instead, which is a progression system some DMs like to utilize. Oh, and don't skimp on picking up silver pieces. You will come across shops on your journey, and let me tell you, having enough money for a healing potion could very well save you another credit.
So the first order of business that Sir Linton gives you is to deal with a black dragon that's been getting in the way of the town's caravans. So you gotta go face this dragon who is none too happy with your intrusion.
What are you doing in my swamp?
After you deal with the dragon, Corwin sends you to Corringlane, where the mayor tells you of 3 areas where monsters are gathering. A series of caves, an abandoned mine, or the old well. All 3 of these areas connect to an underground city where you can find treasure rooms off the main path.
And waiting at the end of the underground city is one mean-looking shadow elf. Not Drow, there's a difference. And this guy is annoying! Packing invisibility, hold person, lightning bolt, skeleton minions, and a really mean sword. But once you drive him off, he invites you to the Sable Tower where his master awaits. This lines up with something the mayor heard, so then you head to Fort Runnels, the nearby town. Standing in your way, however, is another manticore. Once you defeat it, you find out that there are 2 ways to reach the tower. You can take the long way around the mountain, or take a shortcut through the dwarven tunnels. Tunnels which, by the way, are guarded by a red dragon.
Yup, this game has a super boss. And you know it's a super boss because the local informant gives you several chances to reconsider your decision should you wish to fight it. And believe you me, there's a good reason for it. It has insta-kill fire breath, punishingly powerful attacks, and so much health that its health bar doesn't even appear until the 3rd phase of the fight. But it's worth it for the bragging rights, not to mention the wealth of treasures waiting for you if you pull it off, including a ring of fire resistance.
Could have used that before fighting a red dragon, who breathes fire.
Finally, we come to the Sable Tower itself. 6 floors of treacherous traps, menacing monsters, tantalizing treasures, and a riveting run-back with the Shadow Elf on floor 5. And waiting for you at the top of it all is the mastermind behind the attacks, the Archlich Demos. Except you don't fight him right away. To nobody's surprise, he sees you as less than dirt, and apparently he means that literally since he sicks 2 mud golems on you. But once you actually face Demos himself, the gloves come off.
Teleport, Fireball, Lightning Bolt, Meteor Swarm, Mirror Image, Animate Dead, not to mention that obviously evil staff of his. This guy isn't effing around. But once you defeat him, the adventurers manage to escape the crumbling tower thanks to the teleport crystal behind the throne. And cue credits, followed by a post-credit scene which makes it look like the party is parting ways, until you see those 3 magic words. To be continued.
All cards on the table, Tower of Doom was a great conversion of D&D basics into a beat-em-up setting. The gameplay was far more tactical than your typical beat-em-up, with enemy encounters requiring you to really think on the fly, considering not only your basic attacks, but the inventory system giving you additional options. Critics also praise such elements as the game's length and complexity, not to mention the non-linear level structure. I know it sounds cliche, but it really does make you feel like you're in an actual D&D campaign.
Also contributing to the experience is the attention to detail, in more ways than one. First off, yeah, the sprites are really well detailed, which is to be expected of Capcom's best arcade titles. But the more important details of note are the ones that really nail the world of D&D. I already mentioned the troll leader having to be burned, but pretty much all of the enemies come straight out of the compendium.
from the small fry to the stage bosses. And there's also other touches like how enemy encounters have their own music apart from the stage themes.
And it seems the critics largely agree with all this. Several publications gave Tower of Doom solid reviews, saying that while it wouldn't necessarily be remembered as well as games like Golden Axe, Final Fight, or Streets of Rage, it certainly deserves to be in the conversation with them. And it did have a good measure of success with the general public as well, both in Japan and North America.
That being said, there were some issues that needed to be addressed. The background palette was a bit lacking. The soundtrack itself, while okay on its own, wasn't quite as good as some of the other fantasy beat-em-ups of the era, and a few of the special moves were a little bit awkward. That and the inventory system needed a bit of work. You were given no clue as to what item was next in the cycle. But all these issues would be addressed in the sequel.
Wait, there's more? Those guys dealt with a freaking archlich. How much juicier can this get?
Well, the real juicy part apparently happened 2 years later, as those same adventurers made their way through the region of Mystara called the Broken Lands toward the Principalities of Glantry. Turns out they also picked up a couple new allies along the way.
Judging by your tone, it sounds like they jumped on the wagon none too soon.
Indeed, as what happened at the Sable Tower, according to the story, was only a prelude toward a greater crisis.
Yeah, when you put "to be continued" at the end of the game, people expect you to follow through, and Capcom did so 2 years later with Shadow over Mystara. This is a direct sequel to Tower of Doom, taking place 2 years after the battle with Deimos atop Sable Tower. And as a good sequel should, Shadow over Mystara did the same things that Tower of Doom did, but better. Let's start with the 2 new classes that were available.
The first of these new classes is the Magic User. I honestly don't know why they didn't just call him a wizard. Who is a classic example of high risk, high reward. This Master of the Arcane has devastating spells, but is as squishy as they come, can't do much in the way of melee damage, and will die quickly in the hands of beginners. But to make up for it, he can teleport and has a spell that can protect him from damage temporarily. And if you can find the Staff of Wizardry, you can unleash magical hell on your enemies.
Then there's the Thief. This nimble lady is tops when it comes to agility, capable of all manner of acrobatic feats. True to her class, she can pickpocket enemies as well, and even backstab them for critical damage. She's also a master of unlocking, able to pick locks and detect traps. And she's a sure hand with projectile items. She has a bottomless supply of rocks to sling, and she uses burning oil in some of her moves, and with the highest level cap, she gets the most from consumable magic items. But like the Magic User, she's not too good on defense, so she can be a challenge. Fun fact, the Thief's default name is Moriah, and she bears a resemblance to Mariah, one of Dio's followers in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stardust Crusaders. And considering that Capcom made the JoJo arcade games based on that part, with Mariah appearing in the second one, it feels kind of more than a coincidence.
One thing to note is that multiple characters can now choose the same class with alternate colors available. But there's a hard limit of 2 players per class. The gameplay has expanded as well. For one thing, the moveset has grown with command attacks, a sliding move that lets you get out of tight spaces and grab treasures in the process, and 4 of the classes have a Mega Crash type move that deals great damage to surrounding enemies at the cost of some vitality. Another thing is that the game keeps better track of your armor now, so you'll have a visual on your gear. And the inventory button brings up a ring so you'll know which item is next on your rotation.
And you'll need to keep all of this in mind with your new adventure. You start by saving some captive villagers from goblin bandits, and then you head to the village of Trenton, which is under siege. Once you defeat the invading goblins and their war machine, you get a good rest, and then head for Fort Monteleon, where your first choice in the game appears. Go by land to Glantry atop a monster train, or take the river, which, while longer, has fewer hostile encounters. Once you arrive in Glantry, the prince processes the news of the recent monster attacks and tells you that the Shadow Elves are on the move, and he arranges a flight for you on a skyship to the city of Raphielton in Angmor.
Unfortunately, your ride is interrupted by Shadow Elves who have a harpy in their back pocket. During the encounter, you notice a castle in the sky, something that the party claims is impossible, but this is D&D. Anything is possible with a high enough roll. You then fight the head Shadow Elf, Tel Arin, who not only has a big-ass sword, but can summon skeletons to interfere. And just when you think you've beaten him, he splits in 5 and unleashes his strongest magic. You only escape with your lives thanks to a certain elf who shows up at the last minute.
But that doesn't stop you from having to make an emergency landing in the woods. This leads to your next choice. head to the nearest town, or venture through the Woods of Despair, or if you have an elf in your party, you can cross the forest bridge instead. Whichever route you take, you're then treated to some exposition about an ominous tree in the middle of the region, where an equally ominous sorceress is planning her conquest of Mystara. This is Sin, the mastermind behind everything, and her hiding place is guarded by, of course, a manticore. And even when you break into her lair, she sends a lich after you instead, and then uses a sleeping spell on you and dumps you in the grove. The nerve!
As you fight your way through the grove, taking out a displacer beast in the process, you encounter a gnome who asks for your help in saving his village from monsters. After you make your choice, but before the stage, if you have the skin of that displacer beast, you can trade it at the shop for some useful gear. Now, if you accept the gnome's request, your next stage will put you up against a chimera, and once that beast falls, the gnomes will invite you into their village to rest, for a small fee for the temporary shrinking potion. And you can gather some powerful equipment and useful information. Or you can continue your pursuit of Sin, but that will put you up against a black dragon.
Either way, after this stage, you're going down. Literally. The next stage is the Cave of Raphael the Immortal, a pit that reaches down into the underground world. And it's a long way down. After you beat your way through the monsters there, you proceed further downward and come across a veritable treasure trove, only to be interrupted by an unseen monster who threatens you multiple times to turn back. Take a wild guess who it is. Yep, it's that red dragon again. But if you manage to defeat it and obtain its horns, you can have it fashioned into a sword beyond all others. Worth it!
Once you reach the depths of the underground world, you are given another choice on how to get to the castle in the distance. Cross the bridge over the lava to fight a flame salamander, cross the bridge in the frozen caves to fight a frost salamander, or if you have a dwarf in your party, you can proceed through the underground water passage to settle things with Tel Arin, who has also brainwashed his brother, Tel Eleron, the elf who helped you earlier. Word of advice if you choose this path, focus on Tel Arin only and keep Tel Eleron alive so that you can snap him out of it.
After your trek through the underground, you arrive at Sin's castle, and it turns out the thief had picked up the warp crystal from Deimos' tower, implying that she's been following the party for a lot longer than we thought. And similar to Sable Tower, Sin's citadel is a gauntlet filled with traps, a multitude of enemies, and some tough bosses between you and the sorceress, including the Grand Masters, who are Sin's most powerful generals. And suddenly, the decisions you made earlier start coming into play. If you didn't fight Tel Arin in the underground, you'll fight him here. And if you did fight him and kept Tel Eleron alive, you'll have one less boss fight and he'll fight the Grandmaster Nagpa personally to avenge his brother. Against Sin, however, yeah, he doesn't fare nearly as well.
As it turns out, Sin's objective is to awaken a terrifying demon of immense power known only as the Fiend in a bid to conquer Mystara. And her true form is that of a red dragon. But if you can endure her fireballs, her razor-sharp claws, her meteors from the ceiling, and oh yeah, her near, if not insta-kill fire breath, you'll be able to put her down. Just not fast enough to keep the Fiend from rising. From that, you'd think there'd be another boss fight. Except here comes the cavalry to save the day! Why take the risk that the party's too exhausted by now? Just bring in the airships and bomb the crap out of it! And guess what? It works! Now each class has a few different ending texts depending on various circumstances, but that's the ballgame, folks!
Wow, aerial bombardment? Well, that's one way to do it. If only we could use that against Strahd. Still, quite a story.
Indeed, I thought so as well. Of course, you hear a lot of stories when you travel often. I'm sure you have plenty of your own to tell.
You could say that, yeah. Tell you what, I'll tell you one of my own stories next time we get a break.
I'd be interested. For now, though, let's go see what the tavern owner needs. I doubt we want to keep him waiting.
Yeah, Shadow over Mystara is an excellent follow-up to Tower of Doom. As a matter of fact, it feels like the second half of a saga. It's clear that Capcom took what worked in Tower of Doom and made it work that much better in the sequel.
More characters to choose from, expanded gameplay options, better looking graphics, a stronger soundtrack, and more impact on the player choices. This is essentially Tower of Doom again, but better. And critics largely agreed. Plus, there are many who feel that this game still holds up as one of Capcom's best beat-em-ups.
Honestly, this duology is kinda like pairing strawberries with basil, which is actually a recipe I found in a good cookbook when I was a teenager. Back then, you probably wouldn't think that combining an RPG and a beat-em-up would even work, even given the pedigree of Dungeons & Dragons. But the teams at Capcom found a way to not only make it work, but capture the essence of the D&D world in a way that was special.
Nowadays you can find a good number of RPG beat-em-ups out there, even some with more traditional RPG mechanics, but back then, this was quite a novel prospect, and thankfully, you can play these titles by official means today. In 2013, Capcom released these two games in a bundle called Dungeons & Dragons Chronicles of Mystara for PlayStation 3, Xbox One, Wii U, and Steam. The bundle even features unique challenges, art galleries, and an online multiplayer mode using GGPO. So if you want to check these games out for yourself, we both say it's well worth your time and gold pieces.
And like real D&D, these games are best enjoyed with friends. With that in mind, I do recommend the Steam version because that's the easiest to get a hold of. Besides, you won't even need a cutting-edge computer to play it.
Heck, you can probably play it on a computer from like 15 years ago. As for the two of us, well, we got a session coming up, so we gotta do some strategizing.
I'm the Quarter Guy.
And I'm the Green Scorpion.
And until next time,
the arcade is closed.
Hey there everyone, QG here. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe, hype the video, and help share it around. Feel free to check out my live streams on Twitch or follow me on Blue Sky. If you want to help me out, you can become a channel member on YouTube or support me on Patreon. And check out the pinned comment for my current fundraisers. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.